Hi all, it's Jan of the Jan Files. I'm going to talk today about Melania Trump and her bringing up Epstein again. Thank you, Melania. Why did she do it? Well, there are a couple of suggestions, rumors, whatever. I'm just going to take you again because I do have another video on this several months ago, I think at this point, about the web of the modeling world, that Trump was a part of, Epstein, and a whole other cast of characters. And I'm going to talk about that cast of characters. I tried to do this off the cuff. I failed miserably. I've been doing this for now hours, I think. So I finally just put something together I could almost read from. So bear with me. Like I said, I'm a little under the weather, but I really needed you to know this stuff because I think it's really important. Because even though you might have heard it before, there are names now that are coming into play, especially in relationship to Melania, that we may not have focused on before. So, mea culpa for reading, but stay with me here, folks. So, Melania got up there the other day and, said the lies linking me with the disgraceful Jeffrey Epstein need to end today. And here's the funny thing. It all could end if she really, the dumb bitch, figured out that her husband could end it, right? If she's innocent and he's, it could all be ended. Release all the files, right? So this other thing that she called the survivors for and said let them and put the burden on them is just more bullshit. The burden should be on Trump and the DOJ. But Melania is Melania. Not very bright, folks. Not very bright. And so, and thankfully so right now because she reminded us of the Epstein files. So let me go, read a little bit more. She said she was never Epstein's victim. She said Epstein didn't introduce her to Donald Trump. She said her email to Ghislaine Maxwell, the convicted sex trafficker currently serving 20 years in a very nice, cozy prison, was nothing more than a casual correspondence. Yeah, I tell people I love them when love Melania to Ghislaine and, give me a call. Yeah. Okay, right. So, sorry. But here's the thing. Why now? None of the stuff that she was talking about, the email that was in the Epstein files, is new. This isn't new. So why now? That's really the question that everybody is asking. Everybody knows she's lying, and it was pathetic, but why now? And I'm not saying I necessarily am going to answer that, but I'm going to give you something to think about, okay? And so here's the question. What brought Melania Trump to the United States? Because the answer to that question, one name connects Epstein, his procurer, the founder of the world's most powerful modeling agency, and the President of the United States into a single documented network. And that's the key here. This was a network. These people weren't operating in silos. They weren't abusing young girls in silos. They all knew what was going on. To understand the story, we're going to go back to Paris of 1972 and a man by the name of John Casablancas. Now, if you don't know that name, many of us do who are older, because he was in Page Six all the time. He was very famous, elite modeling agency. He was very famous, okay? He started the supermodel thing. He founded Elite Model Management and essentially invented the modern modeling industry. Cindy Crawford, Naomi Campbell, etc., all elite. He turned teenage girls into global brands and made himself a billionaire in the process. He also built something else, a template. So basically, how he ran his modeling agency was used as a template for other modeling agencies. This template worked like this: recruit young girls, often teenagers, from places where economic desperation makes them easy to recruit. Sponsor their visas, put them in apartments you control, charge them for everything: rent, walking lessons, clothing, headshots, deductions against future earnings. Keep them in debt, keep them dependent, keep them available. A federal lawsuit filed under New York's Child Victims Act described the people running Elite. This was a lawsuit, a federal lawsuit filed, that the very adults responsible for taking care of these children models were alleged to have done all of these things I mentioned above, in addition to have competed with each other. Listen to this. As to who could have sex with the most young models. Now, I'm sure he wasn't having that bet with Eileen Ford of Ford Models. Maybe. I don't think so. But anyway. Now, he died in 2013. And what you should know is that he was known as a predator. He was known as a pedophile. He had a thing for young girls. He actually married, I don't know exactly when in the 2000s, a 17-year-old in his second marriage. A 17-year-old. Okay? He died of cancer in 2013. But he left behind two proteges who would take his template global. Now, the template is how you treated models, right? Their names were Jean-Luc Brunel and Paolo Zampoli. Hear the name Paolo Zampoli because he's going to come back again. And in 1995, both of them moved to the United States. They both moved to New York. And they both used the same playbook. Now, Jean-Luc Brunel, before he came here, was running Karen models in Paris since 1978. By the 1980s, he was a fixture on the Paris social scene, known for his access to young women and his willingness to share them with powerful men. Now, we all can actually look into a 60 Minutes documentary that was all about Jean-Luc Brunel, and it was in 1988. Diane Sawyer went to Paris, spoke to the models, spoke to him, and they accused him of raping them. They accused him of handing him over to other men. They accused him of not allowing them to get gigs if they didn't perform services for him, etc. And they often didn't get paid. It was a nightmare. Okay, but this was documented by 60 Minutes. And actually, when it aired, the only thing that happened, because they did interview Eileen Ford, was that she, stopped having any kind of professional relationship with Jean-Luc Brunel. Other than that, this was in Paris. The French did nothing. And so until in 1999, I'm going to stop this and come back. Hi, back. I'm going to continue talking about Jean-Luc Brunel. He was exposed by 60 Minutes in 1988 and nothing happened. But in 1999, the BBC did another expose, and at that point, he was pretty much kicked out. He was kicked out of Karen Models, even though he had started a New York and Miami office in 1995. He was banned basically in Europe, and so he moved to the United States to work full time. And this is where Jeffrey Epstein enters into this, because Ghislaine Maxwell introduces Jean-Luc to Epstein. And so, and according to the logs, just so you know, because we're going to do some documenting, he flew on the Lolita Express from 1998 to 2005, 25 documented times. So, in 2005, Epstein gave Brunel $1 million to start his own agency. And basically, Epstein was his client. All right. This was not truly a modeling agency. It was an agency to provide girls. So it was called MC2, which E equal, and somehow that represents Epstein. That's not really important, so I'm gonna drop that. But he lost $49 million over the year. But I guess Epstein didn't seem to care, right? His company and its bookkeeper testified under oath that Epstein directly paid for the U.S. visas of girls recruited to the agency, and those girls housed in apartments in Miami Beach and Manhattan were transported to Epstein's properties, not to modeling jobs. So this is Jean-Luc Brunel. Epstein. Connected. Casablancas was also Jean-Luc Brunel's mentor. He knew Brunel very well from Paris, and he supported him once he came to New York. Now, Virginia Giuffre, we all know who Virginia was. She knew that Epstein was boasting about having had sex with more than 1,000 of, quote, Brunel's girls. When Epstein was convicted in 2008, that's in Palm Beach, and sentenced to 13 months, Brunel visited him in jail at least 70 times. Now, when Epstein was rearrested in 2019, Brunel went into hiding because he knew he was next, right? When Epstein died, French authorities, started their own investigation. Finally, they have their own mea culpa. They have to make, because they should have done something in 1988, but they didn't. But in 2020, he was arrested at Charles de Gaulle Airport, attempting to board a flight to Senegal. He was arrested. He was put in jail, and guess what happened to him when he was put in jail? He committed suicide. Sound familiar? Let me just say, he lost $49 million when in his modeling agency that Epstein invested into. All right. In the 2026 release of the Epstein files, including a 2019 FBI document listing Brunel as one of the people, quote, the FBI once called co-conspirators of Epstein. So we have, just remember now, so Here's Epstein. Well, I don't know. It doesn't matter. Either way, oh, you see on my crooked middle finger? Sorry. So you have Epstein. You have John Casablancas. You have Jean-Luc Brunel. You have Paolo Zampoli. And of course, you have Trump. So just remember, this is the world. Now we're going to talk a little bit about Paolo. And Trump calls him my Paolo. He is alive. And he is serving in Trump's administration. He's Italian-born. He claims that he was connected to Casablancas through his family. And I gather Zampoli's family was probably pretty wealthy because they had a family home and a visa, and that's where Casablancas would come or whatever. It doesn't matter. They knew each other. He mentored him and asked him to come to the United States to start his own agency, which is exactly what he did. So Zampoli came to New York to start his own agency. He founded an agency called ID Model Management. Same year that Brunel came in 1995 to expand to the U.S., that's when Paolo also did. And they both were kind of the same playbook. They recruited young women from Eastern Europe and South America, sponsored their visa, housed them in apartments, and made them dependent. So in 1995, on a trip to Milan, Zampoli spotted a Slovenian model named Melania, whatever the fuck her name is. He sponsored her, brought her in, put her up in his building at Zeckendorf Towers in Manhattan. And supposedly in 1998, that's his story, it's Trump's story, it's Melania's story, he introduced Melania to Trump at the Kit Kat Club. So that's their story, but there's so much more to Zampoli's story. So stay tuned because this is really important. And the Jeffrey Epstein was a client of Zampoli's ID Model Management. So he brought her over in 1995. She didn't meet Trump until 1998. What was she doing for those 3 years? We have to check that out, right? 3 years. Supposedly that's when she met Trump, right? In 2004, now this was after, Donald Trump met Epstein about 1983. Okay, their relationship lasted, and we are now understanding far longer than Trump said. Fucking Epstein was never a member of Mar-a-Lago. That is proven to be bullshit. And they broke up over some sort of real estate deal. And then it seems like they may have found their way back to each other, but it's really hard because what's what you get from the redacted files. But it would be nice to know exactly what happened, which we would if they were all released. So anyway, that is what transpired. And Zampoli and Epstein were business partners. You can't make this shit up. Zampoli and Epstein were business partners, and they tried to buy Elite Model Management at a public auction. In other words, Casablancas, I don't know exactly what happened. It's really not that important, but they worked together to do something. Zampoli and Epstein. And how is that possible? That Zampoli brought Melania over in 1995 and she didn't know anything about Epstein? Oh, give me a fucking break. I mean, these people think we're just like fucking stupid. Of course she knew about him. It was huge. The whole thing, we're talking millions and millions of dollars. We're talking about thousands of girls. Are you kidding that she didn't know? And Zampoli, here we go. And here is where you really need to listen a little closer. Adriana Ross. Now, I've also talked about her before. She was one of Epstein's assistants. She was also one of the women named in the settlement agreement that Epstein made with Palm Beach, and saying that she had immunity. They gave her immunity based on Epstein asking for her to get immunity. That's Adriana Ross. Okay, she's not, I'm not sure which, God, I guess, it doesn't matter. She was an assistant, okay? And one of Adriana Ross, one of Epstein's alleged core accomplices, still protected under the terms, as I said, of the Epstein 2007 sweetheart deal, was formerly a model signed to Zampoli before she joined Epstein. So she went from Zampoli to Epstein. In 2011, email released in the Epstein files, Epstein warned an Emirati businessman, Zampoli is trouble. Zampoli and Brunel, here we go. These two guys come back together again, and everybody knows everybody, right? Were named co-defendants in 2005 class action lawsuit called Shelton versus Elite Model Management, a case that placed Casablancas, Zampoli, Brunel, and virtually every modeling agency in New York in the same courtroom simultaneously. Why? Because of what and the way they treated models. And at the time, there was also a fashion photographer, Clayton Nelson, told French media he personally witnessed Brunel, Zampoli, and Trump at a restaurant. The three of them together, insistently following a model. Now, here's the part that gets a little more interesting. Zampoli's former partner, Amanda Ungaro, a British model he met in 2002 when she was 17 and he was 32, appears in Jeffrey Epstein's flight logs. She was flown from Paris to New York on the Lolita Express by Jean-Luc Brunel. She was a minor at the time. So then, Zampoli had a relationship with Ungaro, and they had a child. Now, this is why you might know his name, is because he asked whether it was Trump or Christine, it doesn't matter, whatever, and asked them to deport her. She had their child. He asked them to deport her so he could take the child away. Just a really great guy. Now, now what is the rumor that's happening is the fact that Zampoli not only asked, but this is about his ex-girlfriend, who was a model, who knew Melania, I gather, and has, according to the internet, and but there's enough here that I'm going to say it, but I'm not going to say I absolutely know it's true, but that she basically said to Melania, you let this happen to me, bitch, that then I know everything about you. Is that the reason she came out? I don't know. But there's certainly a link to her and to all of this because they were all in the same boat, literally together. And Now, I don't know if you all know, I think most of you know that Trump also founded a modeling management agency in 1999. He followed the same protocol that they all did: bring them over, keep them poor, promise them everything, give them nothing, etc. That was it. And his modeling agency also was called Trump Model Management. And he... same thing. Eastern European, Caribbean, South America, promised them $75,000. They were lucky. One woman had to sue for $4,000 to get at least the $4,000. I mean, this is anyway, insane. So we're back. And I just want to check here. So, no, Melania may not appear in the flight logs, but that doesn't really matter. She's in the pictures. She's in pictures with Trump literally that was in a draw that Epstein had, a frame picture was in the draw of them. We know they knew each other. There are legitimate photographs that show this. Obviously, there's so much evidence, all of it circumstantial, at least at this point, around Melania being in there. I mean, again, what did she do from 1995 to 1998? That's 3 years. And I will do a little more digging on that. Again, I apologize for reading I did the research. I just couldn't get it together today. So anyway, I hope that you understand that this is information. And most of it is factual. So I think I've tried to delineate where I was kind of making assumptions. But stay tuned. Stay on top of this, and thank Melania. I mean, she's the one who brought this all back right into the forefront. So take care, folks, and remember that she was asking, Congress to call the women. Your own fucking husband is the only one you need to ask to release the files and the truth. Good night.